Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Athlete Cafe.
Hi guys, I'm Carly, former collegiate lacrosse player.
I'm Abby, former gymnast and collegiate dancer.
I'm Frances, former collegiate track athlete.
And I'm Emily, former collegiate volleyball player. Let's get into today's topics and see what's on the menu.
Large cappuccino. Orders up.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Athlete Cafe. How's everybody today?
Good. How are you?
Happy Friday.
I'm a little tired, but I'm starting to get there. I'm starting to wake up a little bit.
I know. Yeah. I feel like, I know this episode isn't coming out till like end of January, but we're recording it the first week back in the year, and I feel like it has been just these 4-day weeks are just a struggle. It's been long.
Abby and I are sick too, so
sickness,
starting the new year off with a cold
is going around.
That's exactly what you should, say and sit next to all of us. Yeah.
I'm on this couch,
it's a
so I'm
cold,
good.
okay? Everyone get over it.
We'll be fine. So hopefully everyone's healthy. Hopefully January has been treating you well. Hopefully everyone, I know in our last episode we talked about goal setting, and hopefully those are all off to a good start, or if you didn't set any goals, that's okay too. No biggie. Just hopefully your beginning of the year is going good. Today we kind of wanted to get into this idea of pregame jitters, the difference between pregame jitters, performance anxiety, and then kind of start to work into setting and establishing good pregame or pre-practice routines. I think there's a lot that can be said within these topics, but I think these two go hand in hand really well, and we can kind of start with those to kind of see where we go and hopefully give some just helpful insight and information and just like normalize a little bit of what those feelings are. So have you guys ever felt pregame jitters or?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Sometimes cool and collected over there.
Yeah.
Ice in the veins. Brandon, what about you?
Oh, yeah. No, 100%. I think like it's just like a natural thing for any athlete. I mean, opening day for anybody, playoffs, I mean, it could be any game, but there's always going to be challenges. I always felt like throughout the year there you're going to know that some game means more than another, and that's just like the feeling you get, whether, I mean, again, it could be opening day, it could be playoffs, could be any circumstance, but just that feeling you get, and that's just a natural thing to be human, to have like jitters and stuff. So,
and I think that's the big thing that like we talk about a ton, and I've gained more knowledge of since getting into this field. But like pregame jitters are so natural and normal, like Braden's saying. Like everyone has them, everyone experiences it, and I think it's so in society. Like how many times your coaches or parents or teammates like, "Why are you nervous today? Why are you feeling that way? Like this is just another game. It's just another day." Like, no, coach, like this is a game and I'm stressed. Like I'm nervous. Like I care about what I'm doing. So I think a lot of times society creates this like negative cloud around this idea of pregame jitters, but they also don't feel good. So they're not exciting to have anyway. But I think, that's one of our big points here today is just to understand like what they can feel like. So I think everybody can experience them a little differently. I know the biggest things are, the butterflies that people feel, heart racing, sweaty palms. Sometimes you're shaky. Sometimes your mind's racing. You start overthinking. You feel like just it's hard. You put so much pressure on yourself to like either have a good warm up or to get to a certain level that day with whatever the competition looks like. Do you guys think of anything else that you've heard kind of from athletes?
Like the urge for the game to just start. Like they just want it to be game time. They want that, that time to just go faster.
The anticipation.
Start, or even just like be over to begin with. Like I just wish this was all done and complete and over with. That way I can just continue on with whatever I have to do next.
Which I think is a really hard thing. Like that's a huge point to bring up is like I've had a lot of athletes say that they're like, I just wish the game was over. Yeah. I just want it to be done. And it's like we think of like why we compete and, we generally hopefully love the sport that you're playing. And so to say things like that is very like taboo, I feel like, but totally understandable just for the pressure that you're feeling and those emotions that you're going through. And I think it's like a lot of times athletes feel like they can't say those things because they don't want people to think that they're not prepared or that they're not going to perform well or that those emotions are going to take over. But it's like sometimes just acknowledging those things and giving them space, I think, can be super helpful too, and talking with the right people about it. But I think, like, to me, when I explain pregame jitters, it's like, first of all, acknowledging and understanding, okay, you know, what am I feeling? What can those different physical reactions, mental reactions look like? But I always say, like, I think there's obviously pregame jitters, and then there's performance anxiety, which is a little different, and we can kind of get into that in a minute. But I think, to me, the biggest thing when I say anxiety, I mean, can be so many different things, or just that jitter feeling can be so many different things, but it's when you don't have control and you don't know the outcome. It's how I simply explain it to my kids, of like, you're going into a big game or opening day or whatever it is, and like, you don't know what the outcome's going to be. You don't know how you're going to perform. So that's what's creating those butterflies. That's what's creating like that's the sweaty palms. Your body's trying to like do its best to like get rid of these emotions and feelings. And it's just like thinking about, I have no idea what the heck's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's so scary. And that's okay. Like, it's allowed to be.
And the jitters and the anxiety, performance anxiety, overlap in so many different ways.
Yeah.
I think that's why people kind of mix up the verbiage a little bit, because, you know, I've had parents say, like, well, my kid, like, their heart's racing and they can't catch their breath and all these things. But then it goes away, like, you know, after a few minutes of the game. I'm like, okay, that's probably just more of that jitters piece, right? Like, but you can have those same symptoms, same things going on for performance anxiety, but it's way more extreme, right?
Yes.
And it's way out of your control.
Yes.
Really nothing you can do except like talk to a mental health professional, talk to a mental performance coach, create like a rigid plan like we'll talk about. Like that will help the anxiety, but the jitters for the most part go away after a certain amount of time.
Because once you start playing, guess what you do? You start putting towards the outcome. You start being able to play. You start having that action that you can put towards it. So it often starts to alleviate those jitters. Obviously, it depends on how you play or what your team's doing. It might kind of alleviate some of those or make those jitters a little worse if maybe your team is not playing well that day. But I think that's a perfect way to explain it, is like, if those jitters don't go away, that's when it kind of leans more towards that anxiety. But a lot of the symptoms can be similar for anxiety and jitters. So just kind of the timeline of when they happen.
The big thing too is like beforehand, if you have those like nerves or jitters or whatever it is, I think like the big saying back, like I always remember, it's like, oh, if you're nervous, it means like you're excited. And then that's it. Like that's where it's usually left at, and it's never explained like why that's the case. And it's because like a lot of those physical symptoms you're feeling, whether it's your heart racing, your sweaty palms, you know, muscle tightness, butterflies in the stomach, is like the same feelings as if you were excited. And I always think of it as like a surprise birthday party, where it's like, you know, you get this jolt of excitement energy and you're freaked out and everything starts happening, but it's like an exciting moment and an exciting time, and you have all of those same emotions. It's just how you're like perceiving it in that moment. And then, you know, that's where once it's usually game time, those jitters start to go away because that focus shifts, right? It's like that birthday party, you know, like the competition's starting. So that's how I kind of usually like talk it out or relate it. But I always hated when I was told like, oh, it just means you're excited. And I was like, what? No, it doesn't. And that's not how I'm thinking about it. But if that was ever explained to me, I'd be like, oh, that makes like a lot more sense. But I think that's the gap. I think there's like a lot of gaps with this. I think sometimes with like the performance anxiety and the jitters, and like how do you go about fixing or changing those?
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point there of just like the perspective. Like sometimes it's no one really does take the time to sit down and go through like, okay, I'm nervous because why, or I'm nervous because of what this event is about to be. But yeah, you're right. Like I am going to play our crosstown rivals. Like this is exciting. It is nerve-wracking too, but like I am excited and my adrenaline's pumping and it does feel same as excitement, but I just need to see it in a different way to kind of alleviate some of those and like just feel reassured for what I'm about to do. But yeah, I agree. I think it's just there's not that further explanation on jitters. And so hopefully some of this is like helpful in that sense of just normalizing it and allowing you to like just understand what you're feeling and where it's kind of coming from.
I think like what you guys are saying is a first like really good step for people if you are experiencing, whether it's pregame jitters or performance anxiety. Really good step is just starting by like reframing, like really trying to, like you said, Emily, have that different perspective, reframe like, well, this feels bad to me, this feels scary to me, or this feels all of these things, but it's actually my body getting me ready to play. It's actually my body being excited for the potential outcome of us winning, right? Like it's really reframing your mind and telling yourself, I am safe, I am okay, because your brain is just trying to protect you from perceived threat, right?
Yes. And what even is that perceived threat?
Right. Maybe losing.
Losing, maybe.
Maybe losing. Maybe getting hurt. I have had
Injured.
For sure.
yeah, athletes. And that was more performance anxiety, though, like barfing before games because they are so scared of getting injured or,
Yeah.
you know, whatever that looks like. So definitely more of an extreme case, but you got to start somewhere.
Yes.
To help it.
For
I think
sure.
it's also okay to acknowledge too. It's okay to feel uncomfortable, or to also, just put in perspective, like as Kobe mentioned earlier, like how big a certain game is, how big a certain event is, and just being okay with feeling uncomfortable and having, like, I guess those jitters, butterflies come to fruition and be like, hey, like, this is what I'm feeling, and this is a big game, and this is a challenge that I'm going to face today, and that's just what it is. And it's okay to feel uncomfortable at times, rather than trying to suppress it and be like, no, I'm good, trying to play it cool, because all it's going to do is probably prolong it up until game time. So if you acknowledge it early and understand, like, hey, this is actually what's going on, it's okay. Like, this is a big day for me. This is a big day for our team, and just going to go out there and put our best performance forward and see what happens. So.
And I think, like, a big piece too, and this could be a challenge just like depending on your team or your coaching staff, but like that acknowledgement is so important, because if it's a big game, who is all probably feeling stressed? Probably everybody on your team. So it's like, I mean, I think we've talked about this with a lot of teams we worked with, like, it's okay to sit down and be like, you guys, I'm a little nervous for the game today. I'm feeling a little stressed. I'm feeling a little nerves, but like, I just want to let everybody know I'm going to go out in warm-ups. I'm going to try and really get my mind just in the game and ready. I'm going to go do my pregame routine and kind of get myself situated. But I just want everyone to know, like, I'm feeling it right now. And if you are too, it's okay. So it's like sometimes just finding that dynamic within your team to be able to just let everybody know, or if it is more of an individual sport, like letting your coaches know and kind of having and finding that support with the people that you need. Because the person who looks pretty cool, calm and collected is probably most likely not. And they're just dealing it with in their own way. But it's definitely something that probably almost every athlete experiences.
And like coaches listening, like I remember when I was coaching, I remember the head coach being like, we can't let them see us nervous or like whatever. And I'm like, but why? Like, we are nervous, but we're excited too, right? Not because we don't trust them or we don't believe that they can't do it, but I think there is so much power to, like, not only telling your teammates, but as a coach acknowledging, like, guys, this is a big game. Like, I'm nervous, you guys are nervous, but like, we got this, right? And shifting that, like, to reframe of, like, we are all feeling these different emotions right now, but let's use this to help motivate us and get out there and do what we need to do.
Right. Yeah. And I think, coaches, for sure, this is a big lesson. And it can be hard because you definitely want this certain persona from your team or this certain image of your team. And, like, hopefully that's stuff that you can work on in practice too, just that communication and, like, building that, like, pregame type of mentality. But I think too, it's like, it's okay. So many times I'd have coaches be like, why are you guys nervous today? We worked on this all week in practice. Like, you guys did so good in the game before. It's like, this is a new game. I'm still nervous. It's like, I don't know what to tell you.
Normalize it and then let it, like, enhance rather than detract from the performance itself, right? Because it's there, everyone's feeling it, the other team's feeling it. And the big saying in tennis is, like, pressure is a privilege, and it's like a privilege to go out there to compete, to go out there to, like, do what you're about to go do. And to your point about practice, I think that's where, like, a lot of the gaps come from sometimes in terms of, like, where the nerves are, is because that practice intensity and the match intensity or game intensity, whatever it is so different. And if you find a way for, I guess, like, coaches to bridge that gap a little bit more. I mean, like, for tennis, we always had, you just talked about in the last podcast with, like, the ladder with goal setting. There's a ladder matches in tennis. We have a ladder. There's a person at the top and you're at a certain ranking, and your ranking's never safe throughout the season. It's not like you're guaranteed that spot throughout the whole year. And that's the same across all sports, but that person can challenge you at practice. So you might have a match, you might have to play against, other opponents, but then you have to play within the team. So there's always that intensity still in our practices. That way we could, go into match day and be like, well, I've already earned my spot. Now I get to just go out there, compete, and showcase, like, why I'm in this spot. Why am I number one doubles? Why am I number one singles? Why am I number 3 singles?
I think that's such a good point. Like, that we don't talk about enough, honestly. And I think that it would help too. Like, I've heard so often that the pregame jitters are more enhanced when they're like, oh, I'm playing against a kid who's committed D1, or like I'm playing against a kid who's huge and taller than me and bigger than me, or whatever that looks like. And if you can try to mimic that perceived threat or perceived pressure and intensity in practice, they will be more prepared for the game itself, and maybe you feel a little bit more calm too.
Right.
I think that's a really good point.
The comparison topic is pretty big. I like that. Yeah, like especially just kind of thinking back to like I was playing football. Like you walk out there for warm-ups and you see like offensive linemen, or you see like even like their quarterback is like 6'3" or 6'4", some big quarterback. You're like, oh, this is gonna be a tough day. Like you see like a film during the week or like in practice, like, oh, we're good. I think we have everything under control. And you see him in person, and it's a comparison right there. Be like, oh, I don't know. So then it just kind of ramps up. But just I think keeping to your own, understand like, hey, like again, like this is a challenge. This is something that's I'm faced with today, rather than getting all worked up over it. Because there's nothing you can do when you walk out of the locker room for the game. He's not going to be any less taller or any less anything else when you see him in pregame warm-up. So it's just what you have for that day.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's a good point too, of like, these pregame jitters or whatnot that you feel. It's like you play the sport because you like the challenge and you want that. Like that's kind of what you look for. And I think that was, the competitiveness of any sport is what I loved probably the most about playing my sport. And so I think too, it's like sometimes you get so caught up in like, oh my gosh, this is such a big game. But that's what you worked for. And like, that's what you're playing for. And it's like, that's what it, to me, the whole pivotal moment of like being an athlete is to be able to go out on those pieces and showcase what you're doing. And yeah, there's so many factors that go into it, but I think the biggest piece is just like building that awareness to what you're feeling and what those pregame jitters look like for you, figuring out how you can normalize it either internally with yourself or within your team or your coaching staff, even family, and then understanding like what we'll get into now is more of like the routine piece of it and how you can utilize a routine to help you manage those jitters and then hopefully like go into the game and they alleviate even quicker than maybe before.
Yeah, I think the big last piece too, before we jump into the routines, is like there's a huge difference in like, I always said this to the teams I worked with because I heard it once and it's really stuck with me. Is like there's a difference between having to do it and getting to do it. Like I have to do this today versus I get to do this today. Like I have to go out there and play these people versus I get to go out and play these people today. And just that like little shift in phrasing can be like make all the difference in terms of your mindset. So. One last little.
The opportunity. It's really cool. I think I didn't use those exact words, but I had a very similar discussion with one of my kids the other day. She's a badminton player and she just was switched training and she's like, I haven't competed since I switched training and I just like have no idea how I'm going to perform this weekend. And I'm like so stressed about it just because the unknown and all of that. And I'm like, you don't have to perform a certain way.
Yeah. You don't have to know.
You don't have to know. Like you just have to go out there and you get to have the opportunity to try it out and see what happens and build that baseline. So super
that can
important.
help with the nerves, the jitters, the anxiety, all of those things. And not getting twisted between like, I have these emotions, I have these feelings, and I'm not prepared. Like equaling each other. That's not the case. Just because you feel that way doesn't mean you're not prepared or
you're not ready.
You have to know what the result is going to be. You don't have to know.
Right. And by all means, if you feel like calm, cool, and collected for some reason before a big game, that's cool too. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Confident in yourself and ready to go. But just I think, addressing those pregame jitters is super important and the physical pieces about it. So I guess in that same note of like thinking about pregame routines, and again, we could probably go into a real deep dive about pregame routines because there's so many different ways to do it. There's so many different things to add, like a physical routine versus a mental routine and all of that. So I think we just want to be able to give some examples, and then I think Michael's going to share just his pregame routine that he used. But I think the first step is to just understand, okay, what am I even doing? Like pregame routines, or even if you want to do pre-practice, either one, but pregame routines can start as soon as you want them to. It can start after you finish your game for the week. It can start like on a Monday. It can start the morning of your game. It can start after school, whatever it is for you. So I think just understanding, like for you, what timeline you need. I've had some kids start their pregame routine the night before when they're eating their certain meal. They're starting to visualize a little bit, and then they wake up the next day and they kind of like have more of just a calm, cool, and collected, like just kind of breezing through the day until I get to my actual game time setting and warm up. I have some kids who wake up in the morning and they go through school. They don't think about the game until they leave on the bus, and like that's when they put their headphones in and start kind of just seeing what they want to do and like creating their routine from there. So I think that to me is the first step, is just understanding, okay, what the heck do I even do? What do I need to do?
It doesn't need to change.
Yeah, does it need to change? Do I feel comfortable with it? Do I feel extra nervous on certain days? Like, is there anything that I could add to that? And I think just some examples, like common physical things, are obviously like making sure you're eating well, making sure you're hydrating well, making sure that you are warming up properly. Like, do you have to go do your own warm up before you have your actual team or your individual warm up for your competition? Is there any rehab you need to do? I remember in college, I'd have some teammates that would go to the training room like 3 hours before our game.
That was me. I would like sleep there.
Yeah.
I'd be like nap there. I'd just have like the heating pad on me.
Yeah.
Be doing exercises, stretches, socializing. It was a social
that
that
makes sense. Yeah, no, I was the one that showed up like 20 minutes
That's
before.
shocking for anyone.
No.
And then, well, all those girls would text and be like, "You guys, it's 2 hours before the game. Why are you not
Panic,
here?" And I'm like,
panic.
"You guys,
We
it's
don't need
okay."
it. We had class. We're like in class right now, right?
So I mean, everyone, but like you needed that, like you
That's
needed
what I
that
needed to
social
do.
piece,
Yep.
and you needed that
Help me relax.
the heat, whatever that did to relax you. So I think just again knowing rehab stuff that you need to do beforehand. Do you need to go see the trainer? Do you need to listen to music? Do you need to meditate a little bit? What do you need to be thinking about and visualizing before, if you do visualize, like going in before your actual warm-up start? And I think warm-ups too, that's a whole other topic of discussion of just the mentality going into those. But I think a lot of times, and especially now in this mental performance role, there's a lot of mental pieces that you can add to your pregame routine as well. So it's like, do you need to think about your sources of confidence? Like make a list or read that list each time before your game. Do you need to add to them depending on the team you're playing that day?
Self-talk statements.
Thinking about what could be helpful for you that day. We just talked about setting little tiny process goals. What are your process goals for the day? And
those goals,
yep, how can you apply those to your game? How are you going to remember to apply them that day? Managing your expectations. Okay, going to this game, I'm feeling really nervous. I should do this today. I feel like I need to do this. Whoa. No. Let's reel back those expectations, set goals. So there's a lot of like mental pieces that you can also be adding to your pregame routine that I think no one really thinks about just because no one really knows, which is okay. But I've definitely taken a lot of time to go through that checklist with kids and just seeing like, okay, what resonates most with you?
And I think relating it back to like performance anxiety, like two athletes that have in mind right now that I've worked with who definitely had performance anxiety, the best thing that we could do was create a pregame routine for them because it's that structure and it's really just customizing whatever they needed to feel comfortable and confident for that day. Whether you have performance anxiety or not, that may be something you need. But for them, it was like, okay, I need to do some mindfulness and meditation to calm myself down. I need to go over self-talk statements and remind my brain that I am safe and I am okay, right? Like, so I think to your point, like mental, physical, whatever you need, whether it's something that's like, I have severe anxiety, performance anxiety or jitters, or I am cool, calm, and collected, and I just want a structure part of my day and something that I can commit to and rely on every single time I have a game. I know I can do all of these things, and I have, key part, full control on doing all of these things is super important.
I think I like how you keyed on that key part because like you do have control over it. And that's what routines are compared to what I always think of like rituals. Like rituals have control over you, and that's what leads to like sometimes that pre-competition anxiety or the jitters because like, oh shoot, I forgot to do this. Like now I'm gonna have a bad game. Or I had a teammate, he needed a penny in each shoe before he would go up for a race. Like, like pennies,
Oh,
like the coin.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, that hurt.
So it would probably, you would think, right? But he would need it in each shoe before going out to a meet, and if he didn't have them, then he knew he was going to have a bad race instantly. So I think that's the thing that, like you pointed out, like we have control of our routines, and we don't have control over the rituals. They have control over us. So making sure you know, they're built in more so, and making sure that you realize like, oh, if I can do this every single time, and it's not like something that I don't not need.
Yeah, and it helps us. It doesn't stress us out. It doesn't hurt us. Like, this should not be a 15-step route unless that's something that you really need.
Unless that's what you want. It's realistic.
It's just, making it manageable. Going back to last podcast, like, is it realistic? Is it attainable? Can you do this and still be on time for the game, ready to go? Even if you had class before or your mom had to take you somewhere, right? Like, you have to make sure you're able to do all the steps in order to have that routine completed.
Yeah, that structure is really good because superstitions, they can get a little dicey there. Like if you I'm not pointing at myself, but
Oh.
you know, hey, like if
Yes.
you go look in the vending machine, there's not 2 blue Gatorades you can get one day. It's gonna throw you off. There's only one blue Gatorade, but there's a lot of red. What are you gonna
That
do
seemed
if you can't
weirdly
get 2
specific,
blue Gatorades? Yeah,
Brayden.
not that
It's very oddly
not
specific.
that I looked in there for 2 blue Gatorades every game, but just saying, it'll throw you off a little bit.
Did anyone
but-
else have superstitions?
Yeah, I like had in college I had to use the same ponytail every game. And even if it broke, I would tie it and still use it. And like, I mean, my family all grew up. If like my mom wore a shirt and we lost, I'm never wearing that shirt again.
Yeah.
Like, horrible luck. So stuff like that. But I also in college would do a weird thing where like, it was more my senior year, but like I would never drink water in between. Like if we had timeouts, I would never drink water.
Dehydrated
I
yourself?
would only drink water in between sets.
Oh.
Don't know why. Don't know why that started. Don't know why I did that. But I was like, I
floored over here right
can't
now.
do it.
Oh my gosh.
So dumb.
It's, I mean, they're
Superstitions.
silly. One of my teammates, she wore, I don't know if I should say, she wore the same sports bra every single game and didn't wash it. That's disgusting.
Oh my gosh, that's extreme. My goodness.
That's foul.
I had
I
one.
don't know. She's going to hate me for saying that. I'm not saying her name.
I just would bounce the ball a certain amount of times before a serve, but it wasn't like the same every
See
time.
that borderline's routine. I feel like
Yeah.
depending on.
Well,
Agreed.
that's how I
Pre-shot routine
yeah.
match.
I did have one athlete that I coached, or she had to have like this specific snack before. It was like a peanut butter cup, a granola bar, a fruit roll up, and like an orange juice. And there was like one time it was a playoff game, and her mom didn't get her the snack
it, I was
before,
gonna
and she's
say.
like, "You guys, I can't. I'm not gonna get the snack. I don't know if I can play it. Like,
But for the most part, you have
panicking.
control over that typically because you can buy the snacks.
What if there's
Correct.
a shortage on peanut butter cups?
Yeah, I
Or
don't
there's
know.
no blue Gatorade in the vending machine.
Yeah, you don't have control over it all the time.
The
See,
school
her mom
vending
didn't bring
machine.
it.
School.
School vending
Her mom
machine.
didn't bring it.
Then
Her mom,
guess what?
she was gonna be
There's
late.
Food coloring drops, and that's just gonna have to be good enough for
Oh
you.
man.
So we digress,
Anyway,
but
yes.
Yeah.
superstitions are fun to talk about just because they're very irrational. But I feel like everyone generally knows they have them. Are they willing to change them always? No. No, disagree.
I don't really
having
have
structure
them.
though is good at the end of the day.
Yes.
Waking up in the morning on game day knowing what you need to do to prepare to get ready is really nice to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did
100%.
not have a pregame routine. I mean, I went to the training room, but
3
I
hours
Yeah.
before.
but really, I didn't do the same. Like, I guess that's the only thing that I maintained. But sometimes I did have class, or sometimes I wasn't in control of that. So
Right.
I would say, like, there was definitely times where I didn't, and it didn't throw me off, or it wasn't like I have to do this. I just wanted
Yeah,
to.
I didn't feel like mine was more just like once I got to the gym and I would get my ankles taped or do whatever, and then warm-ups would start and I would go about my way. But it was nothing like rigid, or I didn't feel like I needed to add something to like help me feel better.
Help me feel better. Exactly. It wasn't like intentional.
Yeah.
But you had one? Is that what I heard around
I
the
do
block?
have a very good routine. It's not a ritual because it's built in and controlled, and I can do
Beautiful.
it every single time. So
what we're looking for here.
typically, like 3 hours before, like I would have my like breakfast or meal or whatever it was. Like I'd have to, no matter what time my competition was at, I'd wake up 3 hours before. I'd eat my like first meal of the day, and then go about, do whatever, go to the site, check in, whatever we needed to do, and then I'd have like a snack like an hour and a half before, and that could be anything. It didn't have to be a specific thing. Blue Gatorade, the peanut butter cup, whatever it was. And then about an hour before, I'd go for like a 15-20 minute run, jog, whatever it is, just like get warmed up, get loose. Then I'd start like 20-30 minutes of stretching right beforehand. And then depending whether it was, because it was the same for cross country, tennis, like up to that point, then I would, depending if it was cross country, go to the line, do some striders, figure out like where we were going to be positioned so I could figure out where to go. It was for tennis, it was just more like doing the warm up against your opponents. So, and that's usually pretty structured the same way. You start at the net, you hit back and forth, you do ground strokes, you then go into like serves, returns, volleys, all of that stuff. So as long as you feel warm, then you're good. And then I would, if I'm playing doubles, talk to my partner. If I'm playing singles, I just kind of consult like myself what goals I would have, and then I would, go out and just compete. That was kind of my little breakdown with the times, but it took a while to like build to that and get to that. It didn't like happen overnight. I didn't just like Google best routine possible and just like find that. That's just what eventually worked best for me, what our coaches kind of instilled in us, and I think that was really helpful to have that, because then I wasn't running into those like rituals that I'd be like, I need to have this, like I needed to have the exact same breakfast or the exact same snack, or do the warm up the exact same way, or hit a certain amount of balls in before I could be like, all right, yeah, I'm finally like good to go, like let's play. It was just always very regimented and do this in the amount of time, and no matter what, it's just about like getting warm and staying loose. That's how I always would think about it.
That's a good point.
Good.
Do you have any pregame routines?
Blue Gatorade.
Yeah, that's
know,
very,
ritual.
yeah.
From
Yeah, I
the vending
think
machine.
I'll go with one for baseball. Football is pretty much like, I think every sport is like different, obviously, depending on like what you do pregame. So football is like more of a team type thing. Baseball is like position wise, everybody has something else they're doing. So pitchers are warming up in their own thing, outfielders are doing, so everything's kind of doing something else. Football, it's like everyone's sort of like warming up at the same time, and obviously you need blocking and all this stuff to create a play, so everyone's doing the things together. So for baseball, I think like routine wise for me, waking up in the morning, it was getting to batting cages pretty early. I like to get swings in really early just to like see the ball first thing in the morning. I may sometimes get something to eat in the dining hall, maybe before, but get some swings in really early, go back to the dorm room, get everything ready for the team bus, get on the team bus, get to the field, and from there it was pretty much, I'd say like, I mean, as a team we do like batting practice, fielding practice, kind of go through all that stuff, but like, I mean, I had a couple other superstitions mixed in there, but I'm not going to it's going to take too long. But things like that, like just the second I wake up in the morning, do something that is a part of my sport, baseball, seeing the ball early, hitting the ball really early the second I wake up, just kind of get me, I guess, in the mood for what was going on. Granted, if we had a game on like in the middle of the week, obviously I had class, so I wouldn't really be able to do that, but I always felt I definitely performed best when like I was able to have full control of the whole day leading up to that game, for sure. So doing something in my sport the second I wake up really, really helped me a lot.
I know this was kind of big in the news like the past 2 days, but JJ McCarthy, he meditates for, I think I read a video, watched a video. That was like, he does, I think 40.
Yeah,
Michigan,
Michigan,
Michigan by
football.
the way.
Hey, I know.
She
I don't
liked
want to talk about
Michigan.
it.
I guess she does.
She liked Michigan.
Wow, are you guys really spreading this rumor now? That's really rude.
Sorry. You read a video about JJ McCarthy. Continue.
I watched a video, but I think he meditates for like 40 minutes before the game, which is crazy. And I think that's a perfect example that he is kind of showing, I hope, younger athletes, older athletes who are not as involved on the mental side of the game. But like that is a perfect example of doing a mental pregame routine, right? And I feel like yours were more physical. I know you said goal setting, more mental, right? But I think back in the day, this stuff just wasn't talked about. And if it was, I definitely would have had some self-talk statements prepared for myself. If visualization worked for me, I probably would have tried that before. I think there's so many different options. It's just, once again, figuring out like what is best for you, and if it is more the physical side that you want, great.
Yeah. And I think because I watched that game the other day, and they actually showed him doing his meditation before the game. Like he went up against the goalpost and just sat down, like headphones on, with closing his eyes. And they're like, I think the announcer said that he had suffered from some depression when he was younger, and it's just something that he feels that centers him, and it's what he needs to do. And he's built that routine however he has. And it's, I think, really cool that they're highlighting that type of stuff. And I think like another big point that I know, Michael, you touch on with your athletes is like the idea of you create a routine that's in your control, but like sometimes the time frames are not in your control. And just, so do you want to touch on that a little bit, how you go through that of just maintaining that time frame?
Yeah, I think the important thing first is like knowing what your like base initial thing that you need to do is. So like I went through my whole thing, but there's a time where in Rhode Island where I could compete in track and tennis in the same season. So luckily there was only one time that it ever happened where I had a match and a meet on the same day. Thankfully Rhode Island is the smallest state, so to drive across the state was like 30 minutes, but it's a lot. It's a lot for Rhode Island. Okay. So it's my commute to work now, but it was, I barely had any time to get ready. So when I went from my match to my meet, I literally got out of the car. I was already changed. I was tying on my shoelaces. And like the only things in my head that I needed to do was like, I need to, stretch. I need to just do a few stratters, like just sprint up and down the field a little bit and then talk to my coach. And if I do that, like I'm ready and prepped and ready to go for this race. Versus other times I'd be at a meet and we'd get there at 10 a.m. for the first race. My race wasn't until 4, so I had a 6-hour time gap there. And like I said, I wait 3 hours for a meal, so I'm like, what am I gonna have to like eat 2 meals now or something? So it's just about figuring out the shrunken versus stretched kind of plan. So you have your initial routine plan, and then you kind of change the timing piece. Like let's say you normally warm up, like I would jog for 10-15 minutes, maybe it's 5 to 10. So how can you cut the time pieces in your routine, that way you're prepared for these certain scenarios. Like if you need a stretched out plan, if you're at an all-day tournament, right, you're going to be playing multiple games in one day, so like you prep for it, and then how do you prep for the next one? Like what are the small little steps that you can do to make sure you're going to feel physically and mentally ready each time? And then we kind of, when I do it with my, my athletes that I work with, we'll break it down into like, what's that physical prep? What's that mental prep now? Because it is so much more involved in all these routines. So, physical warm up, jogging 15 to 20 minutes, and then we like check in with coach, like talk through the game plan, look through my goals, what I set on the sheet that we have. And then maybe it's mental rehearsal. Maybe it's these self-talk affirmation statements. Maybe it's more developed out if it's that stretched out plan, and then shorter if it's that shrunken one.
So are you saying you don't have to do the same routine every single time?
Not necessarily. I think as long as you have to do whatever you need most to feel physically ready. But if I have the choice to do that routine and I have the time for it, it's good. But you should also have that plan, because that's where this pre-competition jitters and anxiety can come from if you don't feel mentally and physically ready. So if you need to kind of figure out what those constraints are, similar to like with imagery, like you try to go through all these scenarios, similar if you actually watch film, right? You try to go through different scenarios that might happen in the game. And if you don't do that with your routines and try to adjust those to the scenarios you might be in, then you're going to feel like you're not ready to go that day. And it could be a really big game. It could just be a practice, but whatever it is, whatever you set your routines for, you need to kind of figure out those different time constraints that you might have sometimes. Maybe you needed to go after school to a teacher and you have less time to get ready now and you're just going to be sprinting out, but just barely making practice on time. Or maybe it's, like I'm out here an hour early, like I can sit, chill, talk, or, I have to go to the PT like 2 hours before or something. Whatever it is, but just figuring out what those time constraints are is usually pretty helpful for people just to feel physically and mentally ready.
I really like that shrunken or stretched out. I've never honestly thought about that. And it might be even creating 2 different plans, one more broad of like, okay, if I get to these things, that's great, this will make me feel good, but the other one's more detailed and takes longer.
Yeah, like let's say you start with like, I need to do these 10 things, it's my normal routine, and then your stretched out plan, maybe you have like 15 to 20, maybe you can incorporate a couple more things, maybe you can do the meditation for 40 minutes, but if you don't have that much time, maybe it's for 5.
Right.
And then that stretched out one, half that, like what's 5 look like, what are the 5 most important things out of that 10 that I need to do beforehand, and then how can I change those time constraints.
And the biggest thing is reminding yourself that like just because you didn't do the 20-minute meditation doesn't mean you're less prepared. It's just different. As long as you are doing those things that you feel most prepared for, like what are the top 3 that you always have to include? It's how you view it and about just what you need to do to feel ready. The ritual versus routine. I like that a lot. Okay. And I think I don't want to go on a tangent about it, but like thinking of your routines is just a way to get your body prepared. There's not a certain correct way to do it. It's not like you have to, like you said, hit a certain amount of balls or like meditate for a certain amount of time. Like, no, it's just whatever you feel you need to do to get your mind and your body prepared, because then you still have warm-ups and you still have all that time to get going, right? And what are warm-ups? Just a time to get your body ready to go. That's it. You don't have to have the best warm-up of your life. You can have the worst warm-up and still go out in there and play great. Like, it's just what you make of it and what you know yourself to need to help manage those jitters and that anxiety to the best of your ability.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Final thoughts.
Oh, geez.
Final thoughts, I'd say, like, my big takeaway is just figuring out what your pre-game jitters look like, building that awareness, and then taking time to sit down and be like, okay, what the heck is my routine? Can my routine be enhanced? Can I add things to it to help navigate those jitters and just make me feel better going in? But don't expect the jitters to go away. Like, don't expect that this routine that you're going to have is going to like make them magically disappear. Like, they might not, and that's okay. Pre-game jitters are normal. They're all right.
Are we all doing one?
Let's do it.
Still thinking of mine.
Don't have to.
Mine is kind of like a hidden theme to make it a little different. Is whether it's pregame jitters, whether it's performance anxiety, whether it's creating a pregame routine, the way you frame it in your brain is going to change the outcome, right? So like if you are framing these emotions or symptoms that are uncomfortable as a negative thing, it's going to be perceived as a negative thing.
Yeah.
If you think that's just because you missed one part of your pregame routine is going to equal you having a bad game, it's probably going to equal you having a bad game, right? But if you look at it as a different reframe and you reframe it in the sense of, it's okay, I'm still prepared, I did other parts of my routine, I feel good, I'm ready to go, you're probably going to be successful that day. Your brain is a very strong thing, and it's very important to say the right things to it. The verbiage is important.
I like that a lot.
You got one? Not yet? All right. I think my big thing, and I said it earlier on it, is just like you get to go out there to compete. Like you don't have to. Like you don't have to do this, right? Like, or like, oh, I have to go do this today. It's like, no, you get to go do this. You get to go out there. You get to compete. You get to practice. You get to do all these things that hopefully you love to do, right? I think that's like another big piece. Like you should love the sport that you're doing. If not, that's a completely different thing. There's other episodes and resources that we have for that. But I think like being out there and changing that like slight verbiage and just being like, I get to do this today. Like I get to go out there and compete. It's not like, oh, we have to go out there and win this. It's like, no, we get to go out there and win this. Yeah. And I think that shift in mindset is just crucial and usually helps. I know it used to help me with like getting rid of whatever or just minimizing the jitters, but not getting rid of them, managing them.
I think mine would be find comfort during the uncomfortable, because there's going to be, again, there's a lot of big events, a lot of big games you're going to be a part of throughout your athletic career. If you can find comfort even when you're faced with uncomfortable circumstances, and find something in there that like doesn't always, not saying make you nervous, but find something that like allows you to feel prepared even though everything else might seem to be against you. Find some small little comfort level in there. It'll help you get ready.
Beautiful.
Those are good ones.
4 good nuggets. Hopefully one of those resonated with you out there.
Hopefully made it to the end too.
What'd you say?
Hopefully they made it to the end listening.
Yeah, hopefully. Preface that in the beginning.
Congratulations.
But no, hopefully you can take something away today just about like shifting your perspective on pregame jitters and what they are and how they impact you, and then hopefully learning some new stuff about how you do your own routines and how you might need to change them or if they work good for you. Yeah, tough to say, but cool. Well, good. We will see you guys next time. Have a good week.
Bye.
Later.
See ya.
If you like what you're listening to, be sure to follow the Athlete Cafe on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can find us wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts.